to today's lecture. We're going to be looking at organizational structure and your management team. This is one of the shorter sections of your business plan, but it is a very important section. Now, as we can see, we've been progressing through the various parts of the business plan until we've gotten to this part, and this part is more about you than your business idea. It's all about you and your team. It's also about how the business was formed, how you're going to manage it. This section will be fairly short, but it's still a very important section of your plan. The information in this section is vital to you to start and run your business and to any potential investors. This section can make or break whether or not you get financing in a lot of cases. After we get done here, you can see we'll be talking about the financial section. Now, there will be at least 3 lectures on the financial section, maybe more, depending on how much we break down and get into it. There's going to be a lot more detail in that section than there is in this section. That does not mean this section is not important, as I'm repeatedly stressing here. But you are the most important part of your business. And this has been said by entrepreneurs for a very, very long time. Recently, Steve Blank, who wrote he's written at least 3 books. One of them, The Startup Owner's Manual, which many entrepreneurs consider the Bible for starting a business, has said the best ideas in the hands of a B team are worse than a B idea in the hands of a world-class team. The idea being that the most important thing in a business is people. Now, that being said, the people do not have to be the smartest people, the fastest people, the most agile people, the quickest with a spreadsheet, or anything like that. They do have to be passionate about the business. They need to be, and by they I mean you, of course, you need to be engaged and you need to really care about the business. It has to be one of the most important things in your life, especially if you're seeking money. And it doesn't replace your family. It doesn't replace your religion. It doesn't replace, for most of you who are students, it doesn't replace your education. But if you're really trying to start a business, it needs to be on the same page as those things. It needs to be at a very high level. And this is true whether you're starting a business by yourself or you have an entire team. The business plan must make it clear that you are the right person, that your team is the right team to start the business. Readers of the plan must realize from reading the plan that you've assembled the right people with the right skills at the right time in the right place to create and build a business. If you're interested in Sergi and Mikhail, ask me in class. We're going to skip that on this online video. A lot of your business is about proof of concept. Most of your business plan is proving that the idea will work. This part of your business plan is primarily about proof of self. It's about proving that you work. And there's a few parts to this, and we'll go through those in turn. The first part is the organizational structure. The organizational structure section of your business plan says what your organizational structure is, talks about who your management team is, helps you to build credibility and legitimacy, and answers questions like who will run your business and why are they qualified. Now, one of the best ways to show how your business is organized is to use a chart called an organizational structure chart. You've seen these before. They're the charts that are they have one guy at the top or one lady at the top, and then they have more and more boxes as they go down. Here's a small section of one that we can look at. This shows that the CEO is right here at the top, and then the CFO and the Vice President of Production both report to the CEO. Usually there's almost always a CEO or president at the top. Down below is the vice presidential level or the director level. And below that You have what are called your middle management. And in this case, we have under the reporting to the chief financial officer, we have an inventory control officer, a chief accountant, and then reporting to the vice president of production, we have a plant supervisor. I'm sure it's obvious, but this is only part of the entire organizational structure. So just keep that in mind. Now this chart should show, when you're done with it, all of the essential positions to carry out the day-to-day operations of your business. So it does not necessarily have to get down to who takes out the trash, but if you've got someone who's in charge of all the janitors, they're probably going to go under the plant supervisor. If you've got bookkeepers, the individual bookkeepers may go under the chief accountant, or there may be another layer of management down here for different types of record keeping and so on and so forth. You have to know how your business works in order to make this chart. That's one of the things that makes it really useful. And this is a good chart to start with, but your chart for your business needs some more information in it than we have here. So we're going to look at this chart. Your chart needs to convey more information than the last one did. It should have names and credentials. So in the top here, we have Joe Smith. Joe Smith has a Bachelor of Science and an MBA. He's the CEO. So from this one chart, we know the position, the person, and the credentials. Carol Young, MBA in Finance, is the Chief Financial Officer. That makes a lot of sense. Kevin Armstrong, Bachelor of Arts in Operations Management, is the Vice President of Production. That seems to make sense. In this position over here for Inventory Control Officer, we have Bachelor of Science in Accounting. What we don't have is a name, but that's okay. That shows that we know the type of person we're looking for this position. So we show that we have the position, we know we need to fill the position, we know what kind of person we're looking for. Over here we have Jason Two Feathers, who has a Bachelor of Science and a CPA. He's the Chief Accountant. And over here, finally, we have Naomi Benson, who has a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Science in Industrial Management. Notice it says Spring 2016. She does not have this position yet, but we know she's going to have a Master of Science. She's going to get it in spring of 2016, and she's going to be a plant supervisor. This could come in handy for many students making business plans, because you can put your expected graduation in there, and that will be sort of a placeholder until you actually get it finished. This chart makes a much better case for your business than the other one, because the investors typically invest in people more than they invest in businesses. So having this extra information is very helpful. At the beginning, you may be doing every position on your entire org chart yourself. Even if that's true, you should still think about all the boxes. A good exercise might be to make the boxes as they are right now, and then make the boxes at various points as you go along. What will your organization chart look like in 6 months? What will it look like in 2 years? What will it look like in 5 years? So you make a couple transitional ones, and you're going to put all that information in your appendix. It's not going to go in the business plan per se. It'll go at the back. But that way you can say, I know where my business is, I know where it needs to go, and this is sort of a roadmap of how we're going to get there. Now the one 5 years out is going to be mostly titles. There's probably going to be very few names. And that's okay, because no one would expect you to know who you're going to hire in 5 years to manage the 8th floor of your hotel, whatever, right? No one expects you to know that level of detail 5 years out. But by having it, you're demonstrating that you're thinking long term, and you understand how your business is going to grow. Now you can make mention of all of this here, and you're going to talk about it again, just like everything in the business plan. You're going to talk about it again in the milestones section. You're going to say in year 1 we'll hire 2 people, in year 2 we'll hire 20 people, in year 5 will have 400 people. The management structure will look like this. That will be in your milestone section. And then you'll have the actual charts in the appendix, so that no matter where people look, they know what you're planning on doing, and they know that you fully understand what you're getting ready to do. Now, the chart is the beginning of what you have to do. After that, the chart is just the first tool. After that, you still need to convince people that you're the person. So in order to do that, you describe each department and each position in greater detail. You talk about what function the position serves. If the position exists but doesn't do anything, then it shouldn't exist. If any of you happen to be fans of The Sopranos, they would have on Sopranos, they would talk about people who had no show jobs and no work jobs. In a startup company, there is absolutely no room for a no-show job, and there's no room for a no-work job. So no position in your company needs to have that. They all have to have things they need to get done. You're going to want a quick description of all key people for yourself and for your team. What experience do you have that will be important to the success of your business? It has to be related back to the success of your business. The fact that you are really, really good at poker and you're an accountant probably doesn't help. What experience, the fact that you've had 5 years working in the restaurant industry and you're going to go to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers doesn't help much. Now, if you've had 5 years experience in the restaurant industry and you're going to start a restaurant, then that experience is relevant. Now, that does not mean that any experience that you have, if it's not directly related to what you're doing, is not relevant. For instance, some of you may be Boy or Girl Scouts. I don't know what the Girl Scout equivalent of an Eagle Scout is, but for Boy Scouts, there's a rank called an Eagle Scout. It's a pretty difficult rank to get, and just the fact that you've achieved that would tell people some things about yourself. Would tell you have organizational skills. It would tell them that you have the ability to get things done. It would tell them that you have the ability to begin a project, lead it through to completion, and be successful. All of those things are required of an Eagle Scout. So, maybe your Eagle Scout project, like my son's, is to make picnic tables and to beautify an area around a church. That's an awesome project. If my son goes to work for a technology company and writes a business plan, how does that apply? Well, the technology company is probably not going to need picnic tables, but they do need someone who can start a project, figure out how to do that project, and get it done. So those sort of things do matter. If you can make a case for what you've done mattering, then include it. If you can't, then don't. Same with your skills. If you're really good at handsprings, it's highly unlikely that's relevant. If there's something that you're really good at that you can relate back to your business, awesome. Also, your prior employment, you can outline that, particularly if it's relevant. You can also mention what makes you uniquely qualified to do the job. Have you had past successes? What are your quantified achievements, like number of years at an employer, number of people you've managed, the fact that you've increased revenues by a specific percentage, anything like that. This is kind of a sales section of the plan. You're selling yourself and your team. Hard facts, awards, and accomplishments will help, and they should combine to tell a story of who you are and who your team is and why your team would be successful. And one of the big things about this is businesses often have to pivot, which means that they start out doing one thing, but they end up doing something else. Now, people need to look at this and read about you and think, well, hey, even if this bad thing happens, even if the market doesn't go that way, this idea might not work, but these are good people. They'll be able to make something work. Because, again, investors are investing in you. They're not investing in your idea as much as they're investing in you. So you're looking for one solid paragraph for each person. Maybe a little more on the CEO, but probably not. Because most of you are students and you're coming together to form a business in the classroom, it's very likely you haven't been working on this a long time. You probably don't have 20 years experience in the industry. If you have someone like that, maybe you spend a little bit more time talking about them. But typically you don't. Now you are going to include your resume. For everyone that's on the founding team, you're going to include your resume. But your resume is not going to go in this section. It's again going to go into an appendix. Now this leaves a lot of students with the concern that, hey, I'm getting ready to start a business and I've just been asked to justify why am I the best person for this business, and I don't have any reason that might be true. First, the fact that you want to start the business is reason that it might be true. The fact that you're passionate about it is huge. It really is. I'm not just saying that. It's a big deal. But you may have a credibility problem. And one way we overcome credibility problems is by engaging people with a high degree of credibility in our business. Typically we do that through advisory boards or boards of directors. Now, it's my understanding that advisory boards are typically unpaid and boards of directors are typically paid. You can negotiate with your individual board what's going to happen. Now, I've included a couple of links here. I've included a link about advisory boards and a link about boards of directors. They're both good and you should probably watch them. I'm not going to link them in here because I'm going to post this. This is a Kaltera presentation and I'm going to then post it on YouTube, and I'm afraid if I post a YouTube video with a YouTube video in it on YouTube, I might end up with some sort of an Inception type moment, and I don't want that to happen. So I've put in the hot links and then I've put the actual where you can copy it down and spell it out to get to the right link. The things that I want to stress are that typically advisory boards are not paid. Sometimes you compensate them with stock. The video that I reference in here and some other sources I've seen tend to say about 0.25% of the company for someone on your advisory board. Now that's not 25% of your company, that's 0.25%. So you can have 10 people on your advisory board for 2.5% of your company. So it's not a huge price to pay to get access to good advice. Again, this can be individually negotiated. I've had advisory boards for 2 different companies. No one was compensated in any manner for them. Now, that being said, I might not have got the best from those advisors that I could have if I had actually compensated them in some manner. But it worked for me. This video will tell you how to set up and utilize a board of advisors. It's a pretty good one. You may also want to have a board of directors. A board of directors is like a board of advisors, but as I said, typically they're paid. They are fiscally responsible for the company. Ever since a piece of legislation called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, boards of directors have become more and more responsible for the company. Board members who make bad decisions can go to jail. So they will watch over your company if they agree to be on your board. And one thing to remember is the primary purpose of the board of directors. Now, this is not the purpose that we think about, because generally we want them there to advise us, we want them to help us out, and so on and so forth. But their function is to get rid of the CEO. So never forget that if you have a board of directors, your board of directors can fire you from your own company. This is a regular occurrence. It happens quite often. Now, that doesn't mean don't have a board of directors. I would say have a board of directors and do a good job. So whether they're on an advisory board or board of directors, the people that you use will oversee and advise your company. They will allow you to borrow their credibility. What that means is, like, if you have a medical company and you've come up with a medical product, but you really don't have a lot of reach into the medical community, or you're not a doctor, or you're not plugged in with, say, medical research and that sort of thing, these people will know people, and they will also send the signal to potential investors that you have grown-ups who are serious about your company. And when I say grown-up, I understand that most people starting companies are adult. But I also understand that most people who are investing money in startup companies are generally a generation or even 2 generations older than the people who are seeking the money. So they don't see us, if we're the people presenting the business, they don't really see us as adults. They see us as older children. So if you have a couple people, if you're in your 20s and you have a couple people that are in their 50s that are successful in business, that are members of the community in good standing, on your board of directors or your board of advisors, this will help to settle the minds of some of your investors. Also, it will give you tremendous access to people. More than you probably realize even when you ask them, because people will know people will know people. This is how everybody made contacts before LinkedIn, and it still works today. Okay, after we deal with, now your information about your board of directors can come in the middle, it can come in the end, but since this links us to ownership, because possibly some of your board members will own parts of the company, that's one of the things that is super important in this section. Who owns the company? And what percentage does each entity own? Now, I did not use person because not all owners of businesses are people. For instance, if you're a local Cincinnati company and you get accepted to the brandery is going to give you some money in exchange for a percentage of your business. That percentage of your business is not held by a person. It's held by the brandery. So you would say, hey, the brandery owns 5% of my company, or 2% or 20% or whatever they take. Also, if you've had previous funding from an angel investor or a venture capitalist, they might own a certain percent of your company. In some cases, later on in your business, you might have large companies and mutual funds might invest in your business, which means they own large pieces of it as well. You're not going to have to deal with that early on, so it's not a huge deal right now, but it is something that happens. And then how involved are these people or entities in running your business? Are they active participants? If you have an angel investor who you sold, say, 10% of your business to, does your angel investor show up once a week, once a month, once every 6 months? Does your angel investor live on Necker Island and call you once a year to make sure everything's okay? Who's your, what is it? What is the relationship there? And also, how do they own the business? Now, do they own stock in the business? Are they a partner in the business? This question leads us to business structure. You remember earlier we talked about the various type of business structures. There were limited liability corporations, C corporations, S corporations, partnerships, sole proprietorships, and so on and so forth. You need to be able to say what the legal structure of your business is. Now, if you're asked when you're talking about it, you need to be able to say why you chose that particular legal structure for your business. Now, why is this information important? This information is important because it lets investors see what's left for them. If your company has too many owners, people aren't going to be interested in it. If your company is so diluted that you only own 10% of it and all of these other people own a lot of it, then there's no money left for people to make from investing in your company, so they won't invest in it. Now, a special word of warning I need to put in here is right now we don't have equity sourced, or we don't have crowdfunded sourced equity as a reality. It's coming, but it's not fully formed yet. So something you need to think about is, as that comes into being legal and being more common, imagine a business that could grow very large if you had a large amount of equity, and if you could get a big cash infusion for it. Say a company like Uber, for instance. And let's say instead of getting venture capital right away to start your business, you sold only 10% of Uber. And you sold that 10% through a crowdfunding source. And through that crowdfunding source, you raised, let's say, $1 million, which would be a lot for a crowdfunding platform, especially as early as it is in their development. So you sell 10% of your business for $1 million. And, that's a very early valuation, and obviously we know Uber's worth a lot more than that now. But let's say you did that, and in order to get that, 5,000 people invested. Now, any angel investor or any venture capitalist that comes to you and needs to do a deal and needs to change the valuation of your company and needs to do all sorts of things in order to be able to invest, can't just negotiate with you. They have to consider these 10,000 other people that own part of your business. Now, that problem has not been solved yet. It's going to be solved someday. I don't know how it's going to be solved yet. I've been watching the legislation. They're going to figure it out. But right now, if you were to get that type of investment, it would pretty much keep you from getting another type of investment in most cases. The same thing is true to a lesser extent if you just personally sell stock to friends and family and other people. If you get too many people in, it's not going to be as beneficial to you later on. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, here's a couple mistakes that people make when they're putting this section together. One is they will cover up their weaknesses. They will not talk about their shortcomings. A better strategy is to acknowledge whatever shortcomings you have and then explain how you're going to overcome them. I've told you guys in class, I failed accounting twice. I would never go into a business and say, I'm going to handle the accounting. Anybody who knew me would know that was a foolish thing to do, so I would never do it. I would say, we're going to have so-and-so do the accounting, because I know that I'm good enough to oversee accountants, but I'm not good enough to be an accountant. Overconfidence is another serious problem. Confidence is wonderful. Overconfidence is not so wonderful. Believing that you can make anything happen just through your willpower doesn't work, because you will fail, and when you're failing with other people's money, it's a very hard lesson. Another thing, thinking your friends and family members are the right people for the job, whatever the job is, sometimes they are. Usually they're not. You guys probably all know stories of family businesses that were fantastic, and then the son took over because that's what the son is supposed to do, and then a few years later the business was in the shambles. Now, we talked about this when we talked about financing. We mentioned friends, family, and fools when we discussed financing, and what we were saying was these people will donate money, but they may be a big problem down the road. The same thing applies to hiring them. You may hire them and they may be able to help you out, but if they don't really have the skills you need, or they don't really want to be in the business, it's going to be trouble down the road. And then what happens when you have to fire them? I mean, imagine having to fire your brother or your cousin or something like that. It would be a horrible, horrible situation. A couple tips. Start with yourself. Figure out your own strengths and weaknesses. You know what you're good at and what you're bad at, but also ask others to do the same thing. And be honest with them. Tell them, I need to have an objective opinion. Don't just give me fluff. Tell me what you really think I'm good at and what you really think I'm bad at. See if it matches with what you think about yourself. It might or it might not. But if you get 2 or 3 people to do that, you might have a better picture of who you are, and then you can help work that into your business plan. Hire or partner with people who complement you. So like me, I'm not good at accounting. I would partner very likely with an accountant or someone who is good at finance if I were going to start another business. That would be a good move for me. partnering with someone else who is all entrepreneur and no technical skill would be a huge mistake for me. I would end up starting failed company after failed company after failed company. Not be good. It would not be a good picture at all. Okay, so let's talk about just a couple founding teams. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs founded Apple with Steve Wozniak. Then after Apple, he founded a company called Next, which made computers. And then with Alvy Smith and Edward Kemmel, he founded Pixar. Jobs was an entrepreneurial leader, a designer and a marketer. That's what he did. Woz was a brilliant engineer, still is to this day. Amazing, amazing man. And together they made a great team to start Apple, and Apple's still a fantastic company. Jobs has always appreciated other professionals and hired people who were good at what he wasn't good at. This led to starting these 3 companies, 2 of which are iconic. Notice that the one that doesn't exist anymore, he started alone. Now, that does not mean that you can't start alone, and it does not mean even that Next failed. Next was a pretty successful buyout. Next was purchased by Apple and got Jobs back into the CEO role at Apple Computer. So it worked out okay. But it's kind of funny that the 2 businesses that he started with partners, Apple and Pixar, are household names, and Next Computers is just sort of a footnote in the history book. That's something to think about. Bill Gates obviously started Microsoft, and his childhood friend and partner, Paul Allen, I think they were friends, I'm sure they were, and Steve Ballmer had different roles in the company. Steve Ballmer was the cheerleader, and he was one of the best cheerleaders on the planet. If you want to look something up, go to YouTube sometime and look up some of his old speeches to the employees of Microsoft. He could make that company. He was like an evangelist. As a matter of fact, that would have been the title I would have given him, was Microsoft Evangelist. Because that's what he was really, really good at doing. Paul Allen did a lot of the programming, and Bill Gates did the programming too, but his primary strength was setting the direction of the company. And those people working together with all of the other people that helped to form their company made one of the most successful companies in the world. They made the platform that we've basically built the 21st century on, if you think about it. So much flows through Windows, and to not much of a lesser extent, but to a lesser extent Microsoft Office. They have made all of us so much more productive, and they've made the world a better place in a very major way, and probably none of them could have done it alone. Okay, so this section, in summary, think about this section of your business plan as the part where you build your team so that you can build your company. Most businesses are too big to build by yourself. Now, if you're doing a business plan by yourself, that's okay. You can fill in the blanks later. But unless your business is going to start small and stay small, eventually there's going to need to be more people. And those additional people are going to help share the load. That's all we have for today. And thank you very much for your time and attention. And I look forward to sharing some more information with you down the road. Thanks.